Now, here's the question. Is it a spiritual awakening or is it emotional burnout? Because from the inside, they can feel almost identical. And I think a lot of people are walking around in one of these experiences, calling it the other, and wondering why they can't find their way through. But the path through a spiritual awakening and the path through burnout are not the same. And knowing which one you're on changes everything about how you navigate it. Welcome to Oracle Mornings, your daily ritual for inner connection and soulful insight. Each morning, we draw a card together to inspire your day with intention, reflection, and a touch of magic. Whether you're just beginning your spiritual journey or simply seeking a moment of peace, you're in the right place. So take a breath, open your heart, and let's begin. Hello, good morning. Welcome back to Oracle Mornings. I'm your host, Amanda Johnson. And today we are talking about the difference between spiritual awakening versus emotional burnout. Let's say you're exhausted, not just physically tired, but bone tired. That kind of tired that sleep does never fully fix. And you're more emotional than usual, more sensitive, more easily overwhelmed. Does that sound about right? Things that used to feel fine now might feel heavy or wrong or just not right for you anymore. Relationships feel different. Old routines feel hollow. Maybe you're asking yourself bigger questions about your life, who you are, what you actually want, whether the path you're on is really yours. And let's be honest, this comes up for a lot of people, especially midlife. I almost said wife because I was thinking of moms too, specifically, as their kids get older, it's natural for them to start asking themselves these questions. So what is it? Is it a spiritual awakening or is it something else? The honest answer is, from the inside, things can feel almost identical. And I think a lot of people are walking around in one of these experiences, spiritual awakening or burnout, and calling it the other and wondering why they can't find their way through. So today, we're going to slow down, look at both of these experiences carefully. What do they share? Where do they diverge? And most importantly, how can you start to tell which one you're actually in? Because the path through a spiritual awakening and the path through burnout are not the same at all. And knowing which one you're on can change everything about how you navigate it. So let's talk about why these two experiences get confused in the first place. I want to acknowledge something that doesn't get said enough. It makes complete sense that you get these mixed up. The symptoms genuinely overlap. And both experiences involve exhaustion that feels bigger than physical tiredness. Both can involve emotional sensitivity, possibly withdrawal from people and places, or a sense that something has fundamentally shifted. Maybe there's even a loss of interest in the things that used to matter to you. And in both, you might find yourself questioning relationships that no longer feel aligned. You pull away from social situations. You definitely need more time alone, more quiet, and more space. And you're feeling like the version of yourself, the version that used to show up for all of it, has quietly left the area. So both can arrive after a period of either prolonged stress or overextension, which is why they often show up together or one after the other. But there's something that might make this even more complicated because for a lot of people, burnout is actually a doorway into spiritual awakening. The breakdown that you experience becomes the opening because something's got to give and you become desperate. And that's where it's like your angels fly down and are like, okay, I'll help. The exhaustion becomes the invitation to stop and go inward and ask different questions. So they're not always separate events. Sometimes one is the beginning of the other. I'm going to say that again. Sometimes one is the beginning of the other, but they differ at their core. And treating a spiritual awakening like burnout, or treating burnout like a spiritual awakening, can leave you feeling stuck or worse, depleted in a way that takes a long time to recover from. So let's go ahead and look at each one in its own terms. Let's start with burnout. Burnout happens, maybe differently for many of us, but it's when you're giving more than you've been receiving for way too long. The output has consistently exceeded the input, and your system, your body, your nervous system, your emotional reserves, they've simply run out of resources. And that's not a weakness. It's not a character flaw. It's simply physiological, and it's a psychological response as well to a chronic depletion. It's very common, especially with people who are naturally empathetic, which we know a lot of us are here. Maybe people are high achieving or have a hard time saying no and setting boundaries. The burnout tends to be deep physical and mental exhaustion, maybe emotional numbness or flatness. My son uses that word a lot. I feel flat, he says. There may be cynicism or detachment, a kind of what's the point feeling. Maybe difficulty concentrating and a loss of motivation, even for the things you used to genuinely care about. Burnout feels like emptiness, like the well has simply run dry. There's nothing left to give, and also, strangely, nothing left to feel. If you're in burnout, the primary message your body is sending is stop, rest, replenish. Your tank is empty and it needs to be filled before you can go anywhere. The path through burnout is about restoration, nourishment, sleep, boundaries, reducing demands, giving yourself extended permission to do less. That's not glamorous, but it is necessary. Burnout doesn't ask you to grow into something new. That's key. It asks you to come back to yourself by stopping. So that leads us into, what is a spiritual awakening? And what is that like? We've talked about this on a couple earlier episodes, but let's jump into it just so that we have the side-by-side comparison. So on the other hand, with spiritual awakening, it's an expansion. It's the process of becoming more aware of yourself, the world around you, the fact that there's something more to life than what's been visible to you up until now, what you've experienced up until now. Like burnout, it can involve exhaustion because expansion takes energy, and it can also involve emotional sensitivity because you're processing things at a much deeper level than before. It might also have some withdrawal and questioning because the old structures no longer fit the person you're becoming. And we've talked about it before, but it's going to your edge, your comfort zone. That might be a term more of you are familiar with, but when you live on your edge of your comfort zone, that's where the great expansion is. That's where the leap happens. That's where the next best version of you comes to life. But underneath all of that, there's usually something else that burnout doesn't have. It's a kind of aliveness, a sense, even in the middle of the discomfort, that something is happening. Something's moving. You're in the middle of potentially something significant. And spiritual awakening tends to have a quality of searching to it as well. It's a genuine hunger for meaning, for depth, for connection to something larger, where that burnout tends to have that flatness we mentioned, a loss of hunger for almost everything. So in the spiritual awakening, the questions feel alive, even if they feel unsettling. Whereas in burnout, even the questions feel exhausting. Another thing that is a happens in the middle of the awakening is maybe you feel a heightened sensitivity and even intuition because you start noticing things you didn't notice before. Synchronicities, another thing we've done episodes on. Energy, the subtle layer of life that was always there but invisible to you. And in burnout, sensitivity often shows up more as irritability and overwhelmed rather than an expanded perception. An example of this might be just being out in nature and you see flowers completely differently all of a sudden, or a stream. It just seems so much more magnificent. It's no longer just a stream, but this life force that's just overwhelming to you in the moment, but in a beautiful way, if that makes sense. And a spiritual awakening tends to be accompanied by a pull towards something, a direction, even if it's unclear, or a sense that something new wants to be born, even if you can't see it yet. So there's definitely a trust muscle that's asking to be exercised there. And burnout tends to be accompanied by a pull away from everything and not towards anything new, just away from what's been too much. So I want to go over some questions that will help you tell the difference, questions you can ask yourself. How do you actually figure out which one you're in? When you imagine your life slowing way down and getting very quiet, how does that feel? In burnout, that image tends to feel like a relief, pure, uncomplicated relief. In a spiritual awakening, it tends to feel like relief and something else, possibly anticipation, like you're looking forward to what you might hear in the quiet. The next one is there a quality of aliveness underneath the exhaustion? Burnout is usually flat all the way through. An awakening, even at its most disorienting, tends to have something flickering underneath, a sense of being on the edge of something, even when you can't name it. So check in with yourself honestly. Is there anything alive in there? Even a small ember. And I'm trying to think of a good example to share. I have a friend who I know is kind of going through a dark night of the soul where I had been on my own, but mine was a lot slower than hers and hers was a lot faster. And so it seemed a little more intense also. But I would light up when we talked about it, even though we were talking about this feeling of the in-between, the disorienting word I just mentioned, there was still an excitement to, what is that next thing? What am I growing into? So it felt way more like an awakening rather than just that flatness of a burnout. Number 3, are you asking questions or have you stopped asking? Burnout brings a sense of being shut down. Even your curiosity goes quiet. The awakening tends to bring the opposite, an almost uncomfortable level of questioning. Who am I? Why am I here? What do I actually believe? If the questions feel alive, even when unsettling, that's often a great sign of awakening. Number 4, how does the sensitivity feel? In burnout, sensitivity tends to feel like too much. Everything is irritating, overwhelming, too loud. In a spiritual awakening, sensitivity often has a different quality to it. You pick up on it more. You feel more deeply. And while it can seem overwhelming in the moment, it can also feel like an opening, like you're becoming more attuned rather than just more fragile. But here's the thing. When you sense that opening and the excitement of something on the horizon, your capacity to receive it might not be there yet. Your nervous system has not been trained to receive that from the force field or the universe. So that's another place where you need to practice all the time, is expanding your vessel, so to speak, and becoming more comfortable with receiving opportunities into your life. Number 5, I believe. Is there a direction pulling at you, even if it's faint? Burnout pulls you away from things. A spiritual awakening usually has at least a faint pull towards something different. A practice, a question, a community, a different way of living. If something is drawing you forward, even when it's quiet, pay attention to that. And you might be answering some of these questions and finding that some point toward burnout while the others point toward awakening. And that's okay. Remember, at the beginning we said these two experiences often arrive together. So you can be burned out and in the middle of a spiritual awakening. And in fact, I think for a lot of people, maybe you're one of them, that's exactly what's happening. So once you have a clearer sense of what you're navigating, what do you actually do? If you answered it was to those questions that it was primarily burnout, then your work is restoration and not growth. It's not a time to push yourself into a new spiritual practice or demand more inner searching from a system that's already depleted. The most spiritual thing you can do right now might just be to sleep, eat well, say no, have some other people take care of you, and just stop from the overwhelm. It's not a detour from your spiritual path to rest. Sometimes that is the path, so you definitely want to honor that. And if you feel like it was more of a spiritual awakening, then the work is focused on orientation. Find your footing in this new landscape that you are in. Gentle practices that help you turn inward, like meditation, walks in nature, just getting quiet with yourself. Leave some space for the questions without demanding answers. Sit with your journal and just see what comes through. Find a community with people who understand what you're going through. And then, I hate to say it, but patience for the in-between. You don't need to figure this all out right now. However, it is important that you stay curious and keep showing up. If you think it's both burnout and the awakening, address the burnout first, because you will not have the energy to do the spiritual awakening work that's required from a severe place of depletion. So restore that baseline first, and the awakening will still be there. It's not like it's something that expires or that you can't find again. Your spiritual path isn't going anywhere, but your body and your nervous system need tending to first. So take care of the container and then explore what's inside. I think exercise is a really good example of this. That's something that, if done correctly for your body and where you're at in your burnout journey, can be very revitalizing. You might feel like yourself again after a good exercise session. At least that's what happens for me. If I'm feeling a little wonky, I get some exercise in, get some steps in, and then I feel more aligned, for better lack of a term. I just feel more like myself. So with all that information and the questions we're asking ourselves, let's go into today's oracle card reading. Today we're pulling from the Angels and Ancestors Oracle Cards by Kyle Gray. And when I was shuffling through the deck, 2 cards actually popped out. One is called Spring and the other is called Water Guardian. So let's see what these cards have in store. Go ahead and take a deep breath. Ground yourself. Spring. See your seeds grow. Embrace the change that is on the horizon. Allow your dreams to become reality. Spring is an exciting time because it has so much potential. Animals are coming out of hibernation, flowers are pushing up through the soil, and the days are getting lighter and brighter. The spring card features a wild hare, because in Celtic animal medicine, the hare brings intuition and rebirth. Hares are highly fertile beings, and so their medicine can bring dreams to life. You are ready to bring to life all of your ideas, inspirations, and projects. When this card appears, you are moving into a space that allows you to really grow, expand, and create in a way you've never done before. There are opportunities for abundance, including financial growth, and if you're starting something new, prepare for a major expansion in your life and soul. When the spring card arrives in the future position of a spread or as the last card in a reading, it can also indicate that the coming spring will usher in important energies with regards to your question or intentions. Go ahead and take a moment to reflect on that message. Okay, I love that it's spring and that card popped up. Let's go ahead and move into our next card, which is Water Guardian. Connect with your emotions. Take time to understand how you really feel. Know that your sensitivity is not a curse, but a gift that allows you to receive and understand messages directly from your soul. Water is the element that is in your blood, your tears, and your flesh. The Water Guardian represents angels of water who can help you dive within to understand the depth of your emotions. These angels are all about helping you see that your emotions aren't just the feelings that are on the surface. They are also the old emotions you have locked deep within the shadows of your soul. Through helping you acknowledge your deepest emotions, the angels of water help you to hear the messages they have for you and to unlock the intuitive powers and the energies of abundance. Your angels want you to know that it's okay to feel the emotions that are surfacing in you at this time. It doesn't matter if they are joyous or sad. They are all powerful messengers that allow you to understand what you want and need. Taking time to breathe and acknowledge them lets them flow through you rather than crashing down on you as an overwhelming wave. Note that there are also intuitive psychic messages arising in you at this time, and unless you acknowledge everything as it comes up, you may miss important guidance that can lead you to support and love. Go ahead and take a moment to reflect. I thought these cards were beautiful, short and sweet, especially the Water Guardian card. I think it's speaking more to those of you who are here listening to this particular episode, that you're most likely in that spiritual awakening and not just simply experiencing emotional burnout. Your soul, your connection to the earth, to spirit, to the universe, it's pulling at you, and it wants you to know something very important and something very special. So let's go ahead and weave this all together. 2 cards came out today, as you know, Spring and Water Guardian. Spring is a card of emergence, seeds that have been growing quietly underground, finally beginning to push through the soil, animals coming out of hibernation, more daylight returning. And the card features the hare, which it mentioned is the Celtic animal medicine that carries the energy of intuition and rebirth. You are ready to bring your ideas, inspiration, and projects to life. So I definitely feel like that connects more to the awakening side of today's episode. And if you've been feeling like something in you has been dormant, quiet, waiting, maybe even underground, the Spring card is telling you that the waiting is finally coming to an end. What feels like exhaustion or confusion right now might actually be the last stretch before something breaks through. That's not burnout. That's like a seed that's about to germinate. The card said, you are moving into a space that allows you to really grow, expand, and create in a way you've never done before. Hold on to that. Because if you've been in a season of questioning and disorientation, the card is telling you there's a reason for it. Something's being prepared, something is coming. And going back to that expansive piece, that's a telltale sign of the awakening instead of just the burnout. And then when the Water Guardian card arrived alongside it, I think the card is speaking specifically to the person who came into this episode wondering if what they're feeling is a spiritual awakening or just burnout. The card said, know that your sensitivity is not a curse, but a gift that allows you to receive and understand messages directly from your soul. That's the answer right there. The exhaustion, the emotional sensitivity, the feeling of being overwhelmed by things that never used to touch you at all. That's not just burnout talking. That's your soul trying to reach you. And the Water Guardian represents the angels of water who help you dive within, not just to the surface of emotions, but to the old emotions that may be locked in the shadows and in the depths that need to be brought back up. And here's something else I want you to hear. Unless you acknowledge everything as it comes up, you might miss important guidance that can lead you to support and love. And if you do miss it, please don't fear. Please don't feel like you messed up in any way. It will keep coming up for you until it is something that you acknowledge and work through. And remember when we talked about the difference between burnout sensitivity and awakening sensitivity. Burnout makes everything feel like too much, but awakening has a different quality. It's your intuition opening up, your capacity to receive expanding, like we mentioned. And this Water Guardian card is confirming exactly that. It says, taking time to breathe and acknowledge your emotions lets them flow through you rather than crashing down on you as an overwhelming wave. That's important guidance right there. You don't have to feel swept away by what you're feeling, but you do have to feel it, because that's the work, and that's where you grow into that next amazing version of yourself. And if something on these cards came through and you really were drawn to this conversation, again, you're most likely in a spiritual awakening, not simply just experiencing emotional burnout. And I want you to remember that I have a free guide for you that answers just that. It's called 5 Signs You're Experiencing a Spiritual Awakening. And you can grab that at oraclemornings.com/awakening. And if you forget that web address, no worries. I'll throw it into the show notes for you. So with that, let's move on to our reflection or journaling questions for the day, depending on how you like to go about them. You might want to write about it. You might just want to take a walk and think on it for a while. Number 1, going back to the diagnostic questions we worked through, what came up most clearly for you? Does this feel more like burnout or more like an awakening, or both at once? Just sit with it. Answer it honestly. Name what feels most true to you. Number 2, the Water Guardian asked you to acknowledge the emotions that are surfacing, not push through them, not fix them, but actually feel them. Is there something you've been carrying emotionally that you haven't fully let yourself acknowledge yet? What would it feel like to give it just a few quiet minutes of your attention today? Number 3, spring spoke of seeds that are ready to grow. Even in the middle of the exhaustion and the questioning, Is there something in you that feels like it's trying to emerge? An idea, a direction, a version of you that keeps showing up in your thoughts? What is it? And what would one small step toward it look like? Thank you so much for taking the time to sit with me today through these diagnostic questions of burnout versus spiritual awakening. I hope it gave you a little bit more clarity and definitely more compassion for yourself in everything you've been carrying. If you need something to journal with, reflect on these cards, do please remember that I offer the Daily Oracle Journal as a tool for tracking everything you're noticing and building clarity and evidence over time. And I will link to that in the show notes as well. It's available on Amazon or the publishing site Lulu. I hope you have a fantastic weekend, and we will talk again soon. Take care. Thank you for joining me on another episode of Oracle Mornings. Please take a moment and follow the show so you never miss an episode. Simply open the app you listen to podcasts on, such as Apple Podcasts, and hit the follow button. Your support means the world, and I'm so grateful that you choose to spend part of your day with me. And remember, you are a miracle.